Hello, friends. Bienvenidos. My name is Jen, aka Jen Kahlo on social media, your local witchy friend and intuitive guide through the occult. As always, my lovely husband and co host is David, aka Premier Pulls on social media.
Hi, everyone. In today's episode, Jen explains psychic abilities.
Welcome to the show. Grab a chair, make yourself at home. Jen's got stories to share. You'll never feel alone.
So, before we jump into the episode, there are a couple of announcements that we want to make. First of all, I did change my Instagram handle from Jen Kahlo Tarot to just Jen Kahlo because I feel like it doesn't encompass everything that I do anymore.
You're growing. You're expanding. So it's funny. You're having expansions, but you need to narrow down your scope because of it, huh?
Yeah, so I did like my first private party where I offered astrology and tarot readings. I get DM'd for like occult consultations, and there's just a lot that I do that like tarot isn't the only thing. And in fact, I'm getting booked for more astrology gigs than tarot nowadays.
But for all the faithfuls, you're still doing tarot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you want a tarot reading, hit me up. But if you want an astrology reading in person, just a reminder, I will be at Abracadabra on January 20th from 1 to 6 p.m. You can walk up if you would like, or you can schedule ahead of time.
Yeah, so Abracadabra is super exciting. That's here in Merced. Stop by if you want a chance to see Genesis and ask her any of your astrology or tarot related questions, which is really exciting. A little bit more on just housekeeping, and we are working on our first guest on our podcast. We will announce it as it gets closer. We're still kind of trying to work out logistics, but that should be in the works. I don't want to spell any surprises, but Genesis and I recently engaged in some pretty fun metaphysical activities. We'll leave it at that, and there'll be more to come down the road. So if you are an avid listener of the podcast, you will be excited to know that we're working on our first guest, which I feel like is a big milestone in all podcasts, and I'm so glad that we're reaching that. So
Yeah, I would like to do against a guest maybe like once a month or once every other month or something like that, just because like I don't do everything. Like I don't do palm reading, I don't do Reiki. Like I would love to hear from other people that specialize in that.
yeah, that would be incredible. But anyways, getting back to today's episode, which is a really exciting one. I think there's going to be some pretty fun hot takes and some good back and forth. I came prepared this time. I usually kind of wing it and go off what I know off the top of my head, but there were some things I wanted to talk about myself. So I'm excited to kind of delve into this episode. So psychic abilities, what are they? How are we defining them on this podcast? And what can you tell us about them?
So in many cultures around the world, past and present and future too, there has been respect for folks that have different types of sixth senses. And, you can call them psychics, you can call them witches. They have a lot of names, but I feel like my hot take is everybody has a sixth sense. They just have to develop it. And something that is agreed upon across many cultures is that children have very, very strong sixth senses, and they lose it when they're ashamed for it or when they don't develop it. There is something called a clair. So you might hear people ask like, what is your clair? Or like, I'm clairvoyant, or I'm clair blah, blah, blah. So clair is a different way to say a psychic sense. So to go through them, there are like 8 big ones. There's clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. There's claircognizance, which is clear knowing. Clairaudient, which is clear hearing. Clairsentient, which is clear physical feeling. Clairempathy, which is clear emotional feeling. Clairtangency, which is clear touching. Clairsalience, which is clear smelling. And clairgustance, which is clear tasting.
Oh, okay. See, that's interesting. I didn't know. I mean, I think the most common one that you hear is clairvoyance. I thought that was just like one thing, but it sounds like there's subsections of it. Another cool parallel that, just on what you're telling me, as I guess the metaphysical realm also evolves, and as we learn more and we understand more definitions could come about. But that's also happened in intelligence. There was very linear thinking in psychology where it was only like one type of intelligence or two types of intelligence, which is more of like your left brain and your right brain, more of the creative versus the more concrete like math or science. But now we're seeing that there's all different types of intelligence. There's emotional intelligence. There's kinesiological intelligence, which I find super fascinating. Those are people who are aware of basically it breaks down to they understand how their body takes up space. And a lot of athletes, a lot of gymnasts, a lot of people who have that kinesiological intelligence are a lot better suited to do like athletic or physical abilities just because they understand those things. So, yeah, kind of cool parallels there.
Yeah, so I'll give an example of each one of them. So clairvoyance, clear seeing. Imagine like if you've seen this, I might be dating myself. That's So Raven, where she like actually sees it. So that's being clairvoyant. Claircognizant is you just know stuff. Clairaudient is when you can like hear voices like from the other realm. I have a friend who is clairaudient, and before she goes out in public, she has to like put an oil to like block out the sounds because she'll be going down like the Frozen aisle, and then they'll be like, "Hey, I need you to tell Jimmy I love him," and then she's just like, "Who the hell is this? And who is Jimmy?" So yeah, that's like an example of clairaudient. Clairsentient is clear physical feeling. I knew a massage therapist who, like, when she touches your body, she could also tell, like, a little more than just, like, what a normal massage therapist could tell. Like, do you get heartburn easily? Like, has your shoulder always hurt as a kid? Just, like, kind of, like, ultra clear physical feeling. And then clair empathy. This one is a little, I don't know. I don't know if it's just like super empathetic or if it's like an actual sixth sense, but essentially when you can like feel what another person is feeling, but then I'm like, isn't that just empathy? I don't know. And then there's clairtangency, where like you don't have to be touching the object to like know what it feels like. And then clairsalience, clear smelling. And then
What's an example of the clairsalience?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that.
Sorry.
I was gonna combine clairsalience and clairgustance, which is clear tasting and clear smelling. I have a friend that has both. She lives in Alabama. And she's like, yeah, people can like describe like dishes to me or like also horrible experiences, and like I can smell it and I can taste it. So it's like a double-edged sword. So if someone's telling them like, yeah, girl, I went to this guy's house and his crib was so nasty, and then like she can actually smell it. So for her, it's like a double-edged sword. I feel like you're not just given one. You can have like multiple of these in different strengths, but ultimately I feel like everybody has at least one.
It kind of sounds like synesthesia. Are you familiar with that concept?
No.
So synesthesia is people who sometimes have two of their senses combined. So they'll say like, I can taste color or I can feel shapes, where the other sense gets activated based on one sense. So kind of sounds not similar, but it reminded me of that.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And you're saying, well, when you first started explaining, you said that you believe, or the common belief in the metaphysical realm is that everybody has at least a little bit of one of those or combination of those?
No, that's my hot take.
Got it.
I feel like in the metaphysical world, people like to say like, I am special. I am the chosen one. And that's how you get cult leaders. That's how you get all sorts of unhealthy shit. I am not one to be like, I am magical. I am all knowing. I've perfected my craft. So if you haven't gotten there yet, I can help you until you get there. Like that's where I come in and my belief. That's why I take students. I haven't gotten a student yet, but I'm ready for students if anyone wants to study. You know, it's like I can read your chart all day long, but like eventually, if you're interested, I would love to teach you how to read your own chart.
Yeah.
Or I would love to teach you how to read your own tarot cards or your loved one's tarot cards. Like, I'm definitely all about empowerment. I'm not about gatekeeping. Yeah, I've never liked that stuff, and that's why like it's always been hard for me to make friends in the like metaphysical sphere, because I can't with that like supremacy shit.
Like, I'm clairvoyant, so I know all or do all, right? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, or I'm better than people that don't.
Got it.
And I don't know, I just feel like, because when I was younger...
What's gatekeeping? Gatekeeping, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's like saying, I'm the only one who has the gift.
Yeah, and I was going to take... It has some privilege to be able to, like, develop your sixth sense. You need to be in a safe space, in, you know, a place where you can actually practice your craft. In some parts of the world, like, I'm sure that I would be like, you know, killed or whatever for what I'm doing.
Yeah, ostracized at the very least.
At the very least.
What about yourself specifically? What would you say your, you know, clarion, or what's the prefix? Clarions? Or your
Claire.
Claire. What would you say you have a stronger Claire in?
Yeah, I feel like when I was younger, I had a lot of them, like almost all of them.
But what would you say is like your strongest?
But at the moment, I would say my strongest one is clair-knowing or claircognizance.
Got it. Which is that kind of like that premonition type. Yeah, and I think we have talked about it. That's, if we go back to our tarot episode. That's kind of what led you down the path, right? You kept having these situations where maybe the message wasn't anything particularly important or special, but it just kept happening, right? And so that led you to a path of exploration.
Yeah. And the thing about these clairs, I feel like it's not like they're turned on 24/7. Mm-hmm. I do get clairvoyance very rarely. And it's like That's So Raven, where she's just walking and then she just like freezes and like sees that. Something. Yeah. So when people are like, what am I thinking right now? Or like, what is my future right now? It's like,
doesn't work.
It doesn't work like that.
And that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we first decided that we were going to do this episode, that was one of the things that I was, you know, ready to listen to. So I like that you debunked the psychic abilities doesn't mean like, pick a number between 1 and 1,000,000 and I'll tell you what number you're thinking, right? That's even like another category, right? It could even be as just a charlatan or a grifter. That's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I feel like anyone that has a strong clair knows that like it's not just on 24/7. Usually, like for one of my friends, it is on 24/7, but then she doesn't like it. She doesn't go around bragging about it. Yeah. You know, like it's actually very detrimental that like she can't stop hearing the voices, right? And not like the voices we normally think of, but it's very clear, like, this is my loved one next to you. Like, I need to talk to them. Like, it's very, very clear. But for me, unless someone has like a very strong spirit team, which like I've encountered a couple of times where it's like, we are going to get this message through by any means necessary. And then it like overtakes me, which is very rare to do because I do a lot of protection on myself. It usually requires like me to focus, me to use a channel, whether it's like a pendulum, dowsing rods, tarot cards, even an astrology chart. Like when I'm in the zone, then I can like hone in, but it's not just like I'm walking around and I can, have the same. Yeah.
Now this is also where I kind of want to interject, and I think this is great where this back and forth leads us to maybe a more responsible take on the metaphysical, because I think, like you said, and I totally agree with you, people who run with it, or people who are like charlatans and say like, hey, I'm getting a message for you from the other side, I think that can be very harmful. I think if you're a skeptic or it's not a big deal in your life, it's not as bad. But there are people who are suffering or who are maybe looking for those answers and can be in a very vulnerable position. So kind of with that said, one thing that I like the way you put it, because as much as you do bring the metaphysical and the spiritual and the beyond science realm, you're also a very grounded person and a very logical person. I think in our podcast, we take the take that I'm the skeptic and that you're maybe the person who is a little more in tune with like the non-reality things, but that's actually not true. I think our differences are not that different. You and I are actually pretty grounded, pretty logical. You do believe in science, and you believe in you have skepticism as well. I know we kind of play up the like you're this and I'm that, but we're actually a lot more similar than that. With that being said, I think it's very important also to identify and maybe give cadence to the fact that there are people in this world who suffer from mental health. And if you, not you as like eugenicist, but like you as, the general you, like are hearing voices or are starting to maybe experience, senses of grandeur or delusion, or saying like, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing voices, like, don't discredit that as pure metaphysical. Like, also explore kind of where you are. And like you said earlier, you're in a very safe space to be able to say like, well, I've had this, I've had that, but also know your grounding, also know that you know who you are and the mental stability. And that's where I think it becomes a dangerous place, where if people start believing that but then have some sort of like mental health issue, and then if there's other people who feed into that, it can just become very dangerous. I see that a lot with celebrities, because they're surrounded by like yes people, like people who are not going to tell them no. So sometimes their idea of grandeur or their idea of like delusion can get out of hand.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I had that same concern about myself when I was starting, and I was honing my skills stronger and stronger. Even though I was on this journey, I was like, what if I'm like a negative feedback loop? What if I'm like causing my own mental illness? Like, and that's when I was like, let me do 100 free readings, and if obviously people are like, you're way off the mark, then I know that like I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, and I need to get help. But then again, when like I had 99 happy cold customers, then I was like, okay, maybe I have something else here.
Correct. But you never took the approach of like, I'm getting messages, so like I'm so and so. So that, I mean, I guess that's just what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
I guess if somebody were to come to you and say like, hey, I'm hearing voices, or like seeing this, like I would feel as a professional, the first thing you would say wouldn't be like, oh, welcome to the realm of like Claire.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club, right? You wouldn't say like, you'd be more cognizant and supportive and maybe guide through like all avenues.
Exactly. Yeah. And I actually have had to have those conversations before. Yeah, definitely. I also want to talk about what is a common tactic known as like cold reading. Mm-hmm. So the people that are like, I know all, and these are like big people that end up on TV and end up with like a bunch of people, they have like in a live audience and stuff, they have like a really good gift of like sort of like feeding you information and not like people not suspecting it. So for example, if I'm not going to name this person, but there's like a person that I watch her tactics and I'm like, you're sneaky. So let's say that I was her in a live audience and there was like a more middle-aged to senior-aged woman. Then I could go to her, and the chances are that she probably has experienced death in her life, right? So I'd be like, I'm getting a message from the other side. Have you had a loved one pass recently? Oh my God, yes. And then 50-50, are they a female presence?
Exactly.
Oh my God, yes. So like that's like cold feeding of information, what we call like cold reading, I guess. Cold reading, the way that I say it for myself is like, I don't know anything about this person, but then cold reading in like the grifter scammy sense is like they ask you leading questions like that.
And that, I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because that's kind of what I wanted to bring up in this episode. And it kind of segues into our next part with the examples. So I'll take my time to speak on this. But when I first was in high school, or kind of discovering like what I wanted to do professionally, and I decided to go down the realm of studying psychology, one of the really influential things that I liked and I kind of wanted to go into. This was after City College, actually. So I kind of had a little bit of groundwork of what I wanted to do. It was studying microexpressions. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So microexpressions is the idea or the theory that humans have distinct expressions that they can't hide. And they're called microexpressions because they happen really fast. I think in less than half a second. And we're able to study those. So it's basically a way to say like, oh, these people show this part of their face. And so I know what, kind of what expressions they have. And there's a few universal ones. So it's disgust, anger, fear, sadness, happiness, contempt, and surprise. So there are genuine things that your face, or there are genuine reactions that your face has to those things that I just described. It has been a little debunked. It's not a perfect science, but it's regarded as in the psychological community, and I think it's really interesting. And when we were talking about this podcast, I was like, well, yeah, like when you said it's the cold reading, it's like if you have the ability to maybe understand, these micro expressions, body language, tone, you can go really far. And I think people don't always know that, and it's easy to be surprised by that. I don't want to say simple tools, but studying a little bit or understanding kind of human biology, human psychology, human behavior can get a lot of information for you. So I thought that was interesting, and that's kind of where I was like, well, psychic abilities, I don't know too much about that, but it is possible to withdraw information from another individual without blatantly asking them or knowing them.
Yeah, FBI, CIA uses that type of stuff. Good salespeople use that type of stuff. Good politicians use that type of stuff. Definitely.
And I've had to use that type of stuff in my previous jobs. It's understanding, reading. One thing that has been debunked is what's it called, subliminal messaging. So that doesn't actually work. Where let's say there's a movie and they're sticking like quick pictures of like Coca-Cola, and that's going to make you want a Coca-Cola. That's actually already been debunked because the brain can't process it that fast. But that doesn't mean there's not subconscious cues that we pick up on, right? So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So just something that I was thinking about, like with just the rise of scammers that I see on specifically like Instagram and just in general, they say, oh my God, I have an urgent message for you. Like someone, on your spirit team came through so strong, but you got to pay me $50. Mm-hmm. When I've had those like completely overtaking experiences where the spirit team is like, it's not if you want to or don't want to, I'm giving you this message, I'll give it to the person for free. Yeah. Because it's such a powerful experience that it's like,
that it's almost not yours to hold, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You've mentioned the term spiritual team, not just on this episode, but on a few. Can you clarify for the listeners, and actually for myself, because I don't really know what that is? What does that mean?
Spirit team is just whoever the heck is looking out for this person and sending that message.
From the spirit realm? Mm-hmm. Okay, so got it.
Yeah, so if you want ancestors, deities, like I don't exactly know who they are, but like someone on the other side is communicating for this person.
What if somebody who's alive, let's say you had a friend and then that friend moved away in high school and you hadn't spoken to them till like 20 years, but all of a sudden that friend wants to send you like a message like, gosh, I wish that person would call me.
That shit happens to me all the time.
But what would that's not part of your spirit team?
No. I would say, I don't know what to call that, but that happens to me all the time. Yeah. It's really, really funny. But yeah, I'll call someone and I'm like, I don't know why I feel like I need to call you. They're like, I was just thinking about you. Like that happens to me all the time. I would say that's claircognizant. But I'll give an example. So I was hanging out with one of my friends. We went to go get poke, and then we were leaving. And as I was driving down the freeway, all of a sudden I saw basically like a huge red candle as I was driving, but it wasn't like blocking my view. It was like transparent, but it was obvious. It was a big ass red candle.
They just kind of hit your psyche.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was like this transparent red candle as I was driving down the 101 South. And then I heard in my ear, you have to get your friend this candle. You need to buy your friend this candle. Pull over and buy your friend this candle. And I was like talking back. I was like, my friend is not about that life. They're going to think I'm crazy and they'll probably just throw it in the trash. So no, why don't you go talk to them? Like, what's this got to do with me? And then they were just screaming in my ear, you need to buy this candle. You need to buy this candle. And they wouldn't leave me alone. And then I was like, okay, fine. So then I bought them that candle. And I was like, listen, I know we just saw each other like 20 minutes ago, but I have to give you something. And that's when in person, I was like, you need to take this red candle and burn it because someone was like yelling in my ear for you. But, I wasn't going to charge them for the candle or the message. And then they needed to burn the candle because they were having some bad luck in their love life. And then as soon as they burned it, they asked someone out on a date, and then they were able to go on a date. And then I told them, okay, don't tell that person that you did all this because then they're going to think you're weird and you did a love spell on them when like that's not it. I don't even know what this is. So then on the third date, of course, they did not take my advice and they told that person, oh, my friend told me to burn a red candle, haha. And then that person was like shook and they were like, the week before you asked me out, I went to a tarot reader and they said, a Leo, and my friend is a Leo, is going to ask you out. You need to burn this red candle to draw them to you.
I remember.
So they were both burning red candles at the same time.
And to add to that, sir, because I know exactly who you're talking about and I know exactly what the scenario is. If you think I'm a skeptic, this person is more of a skeptic than me. I don't. That's like the last thing they would think of is any of like, to them it'd be like this nonsense. But yeah, no, I remember that, and I was hoping that you would bring that up because I think that's a wonderful example for this. Kind of on a more just generic example, and I told you this a couple days ago. I said we have to save it for the podcast. You and I, these last 2 weeks, have been on such a crazy equal wavelength. I to you, and I wish I would have written down the examples, but how many times has it happened these last 2 weeks where you tell me something and it's not like something tiny? I'm like, oh my gosh, I was literally just thinking about that and I was going to tell you. We've definitely been super synced these last 2 weeks, haven't we?
Yeah, when I was telling you like, hey babe, I'm thinking about dropping the tarot in Giancarlo Tarot,
yes,
just being Giancarlo.
That was one. Yes. That's right. That was one of the bigger ones. So when you told me that the day before, I had thought, you know what? She's growing. I don't think, basically everything you already said, like I had those exact same thoughts and I just forgot to tell you. And then when you brought it up, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly, where you're at. Another example that I had recently, actually, if you check my Instagram, I don't shout my Instagram out here too much, but it's Premier Pools on Instagram. I recently started doing some artwork and I will, side note, I'm going to be doing some like tarot artwork and some astrological artwork. So you might see some of my artwork with Genesis at her events. But that's a complete passion project. It's not really for, monetary gain. But anyways, I digress. I did some painting or some artwork and I wanted to just be like, I wanted to sell my artwork just to kind of say that I sold it. And I asked my buddy, I said, listen, I'm not an artist. I don't do art, but I want you to commission me to do art for you. And he said, okay, he's a really good friend. Oh, Jose, you won't care. Huge shout out to Jose. He's a really good friend. And he said, yeah, sure, make them and I'll pay you for them. And it wasn't so much more of like because of the money, but it was just, again, for, I don't know. I just want to be a person who say they've sold art. And I made them, again, just passion project. I took as long as I took and I finished them. And I said, listen, they're ready. And then he said, well, how much are they? I said, honestly, I don't know what my art is worth. It's worth what you're willing to pay me. And I will take whatever you think is fair or how much you value these pieces of artwork. And I did, however, have a number in my head, but I didn't want to disclose that just because I had no point of reference. But kind of to the long story short, he ended up giving me exactly what I thought they were worth. Exactly. And it was one of those moments where you're like, wow, I wonder if we kind of were on the same wavelength, if somehow I communicated to this person unconsciously, but it was to the T what I wanted for them. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh, that's super exciting. Congratulations on selling your first pieces. They're beautiful pieces. They're so fun, and he spends hours on them. So definitely check out Premier Pulls on Instagram. And are you open for commissions?
I am open for commissions. It's not something that I like. Again, I don't want to. I feel like in today's day and age, everything has to be a hustle. Everything has to be a grind. And I want to step away from that sometimes just because I feel like when you do something for pay or for commitment, God, it takes the fun out of it. It just sucks it right out. So I am really happy and open to commissions, but know that it's, with no time constraints, no, bulk, I'm not going to do 30, 40 pieces for you. But yeah, I'm open to them. And I'll be doing, I think the next thing I'm working on is the 12 astrological signs. So if you want your astrological sign, let me know and we can talk about something.
Yeah, definitely. And then just something that I want to say before time runs out that I totally forgot. One of my biggest pet peeves as like a tarot reader or an astrologer is when someone comes to me and they say, just guess. Because then it's like, okay, you don't give me anything to work with. Or sometimes people like, maybe if they're not being malicious, but they genuinely don't know what to do. And they're like, give me a general reading. And then we end up only going surface level. And they're like, well, I wanted to know more about this. It's like, okay, you should have told me. So, tarot reading is like following the breadcrumbs, but if you sort of give me more information up front, we can really like hone it in. My mentor, Lisa Kelly, said it best. She's like, it's like if you go to your therapist and say, I'm sad, but guess why? Like, that's not exactly how it works. So,
and I think that is what I appreciate about you. It's the professionalism and the ethics of like, you're not ever claiming to have answers for anybody, right? You're not ever saying like, what I'm telling you is gospel. You're saying it's a guide to answer the question that you're asking me. If it's correct, that's great. If it's incorrect, that's also great, but take with it what you will, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which people come to me because usually I do give them like good advice, and some of the stuff I say is correct, but it's like you do most of that groundwork yourself, like you were so open to this reading that we were able to be productive together. I feel like old school readers are just like, sit down, shut up, let me lecture you, and I don't care if it's right or wrong. Like, it'll be right someday. I hear that from a lot of old school readers. It'll be right someday, you just wait. And I'm like a very collaborative person, and I feel like that just makes for such a richer experience. I feel like people don't come to me for like the answer, they come to me for the experience,
or the guidance. And that's, just like we talked about in our manifestation episode, like you can't manifest $1 million and sit back on the couch and expect $1 million to show up, right? It's the groundwork, and the manifestation is just that little extra push to get you to where you want to or need to go.
But it does help that I have worked on my clairs. It gets us a little bit further than just both our brains. But like you said, I'm not a magic 8-ball.
Awesome. Well, we do have, I think, not too many questions, but it sounds like our discussion post was very lively. So I do want to take the time to go over that. What questions did we have for this week?
We have a few questions, but wait, should we start with questions or the community post?
Let's do the community post.
Okay. So from Mercy094 on Instagram, Mercy said, congratulations on your Spotify milestone. That's so awesome, and you two deserve it. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. And the donation link is up and running. If you go to our Spotify podcast page and then click about, if you do want to donate, there is an option there. But then she continues to say, I feel like numerology was something that I was skeptical about, but learning that it is such a personal experience and that we create our own dictionary somehow makes it easier to digest. Jen, I know you said that you use your tarot dictionary, but what are other tools people use to decode numbers? Also, throwing it back to an episode from a few weeks ago, Days of the Week, there was a conversation that I was dreading having, so I waited until Wednesday to do it, and it went super well.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I read that comment. I thought that was really cool. Whether the days of the week, matter to the communication, like I think the beautiful gift that we were able to give was that, it maybe gave a little more reassurance or safety net, even if it's a mental or spiritual one. That's wonderful. So really cool.
Yeah, glad you didn't do it on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Mercy. Yeah, we're starting to get feedback, and I spoke about cliches last time during our podcast about how podcasters are like, oh, any donation I get is going to go towards like the podcast. But this week there's another cliche, but as we're doing this and as we're growing, it's so true. Like some of the best parts of doing this is hearing people's stories and hearing people's feedbacks and just hearing like, oh my gosh, like that really resonated with me, or I did XYZ because you talked about it. And I've never had an experience like that before. And Janice, I don't know if you have either.
Very rarely. Yeah. And I mean, it's been when I've shared my knowledge one-on-one, but like to see it on such a big platform and multiple people that tune in at the same time, try it at the same time, is just so magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been great. I've loved the experience. So please let us know, your thoughts. And I think there was, hopefully it's on this one that you touch on it, but like if you disagree with something or like, think we're blowing smoke, like let us know too, because it's all great.
Yeah, we welcome all interactions. And then TobeanG_L says, this episode was awesome. I get so much anxiety when it comes to numbers because growing up, it was always tied to financial struggles. That's very interesting. Even now, it still is for me. So I have a slight hate relationship with them. This episode made me feel a bit more at ease. I agreed with David about the whole casinos putting 8s on certain slots to entice people to use them. For me, sales freak me out, right? Sounds like a good thing, but to me, the whole 50%, 70% off signs freak me out because of consumerism, specifically from big corporations, which I'm doing my best not to get dragged into. Also, a fun disagreement. David had said how letters aren't infinite compared to numbers. Correct me if I misheard him wrong or misunderstood, but I disagree. I believe letters are just as infinite. Letters can create words and languages that have unfortunately been forgotten and colonized, languages that are being brought back to life, current languages, and languages that may be created in futures and communities we may not be a part of. Love this episode. Truly insightful. You both are amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. That's wonderful. And just to touch on your 2 points, because I do want to address both of them. I totally agree with you with the capitalism. Like it's wild. You see things out, and it's all marketing, tactic manipulation of like 70% off, and like it's not really 70% off. It's sometimes markets will inflate a price and then bring it down to 70% just so you think you got 70%. But something that I've heard along the way, it's like if you're spending money on something you weren't originally planning on spending money on, you didn't save 50%. You spent X amount of money. So it's like it can be like funny or jokeful, but we're fighting an ocean, right? Because it's us as a single consumer fighting millions and millions of dollars of research. All these corporations, they don't just do this because off a whim. They do it because it works. And the way they know it works is because they spend millions of dollars doing market research. So, yeah, it's an uphill battle. I agree with you on that, and it can definitely be daunting. And then as far as like the infinity of words, I re-heard the episode as I was editing it, and I totally agree with you. It is what I said, and I think what I meant more was like in an actual pragmatic sense. I think you beautifully worded it with the understanding that there's languages past, present, and future, which in a sense, can be infinite. But I meant very like static and like, yeah, there's infinity, like an infinite amount of numbers. But I can also see kind of your point of view. But it was a very pragmatic take on it. Like between full integers, there's literally an infinite amount of numbers. And as many words and languages as there have been, can be, or are, like, it's still not necessarily an infinite amount. There's going to be a finite. But no, I totally see where you're coming from, and I definitely agree with you.
That was all for our community post for last week. And now moving on to the questions for this week. From my beautiful cousin, Elsie Reynoso. How can you tell who has true psychic abilities and who is pulling a stunt? I just think of the Long Island medium. Don't sue us. This was her words, not mine.
Sue her.
Sue her. And I always wonder. I would say really like look at the motivation, right? Because I feel like, again, she tries to sell her shows. She tries to sell her books. She's trying to profit off of you. I feel like that's when you can really tell like who's pulling a stunt. I do charge for my time. I do charge for my readings, but like if you're like, I want a reading, oh never mind, I changed my mind, like I'm not gonna get her, I'm gonna be like, all right, that's fine. Versus them, like they're pushing hard, like sell. And then also again seeing like how many generic questions they ask you. Like for example with astrology, when I'm reading a chart, there's a reason why I'll ask you like how is your financial situation, and then I'll say because you're having an eclipse in your second house, and your second house rules finances. So just let's check up on that. And they're just like, no context, did this happen to you? I don't know. It's kind of fishy to me when it happens like that.
It's one of those like classic things, like if it's too good to be true, it probably is, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And then Toby Jean _L. Can psychic abilities be acquired or are they inherited? Do we all have a form of psychic ability within us? Are we able to unlock it? So I feel like, again, everyone is born with at least one, if not more. But again, it's like also nurture, right? Because a lot of people shut down their abilities because they don't have a safe space to express it or practice it. I do believe that they can be acquired. There are families of like my grandma, my mom, and me can, feel things like or see things like that's so Raven. Like I feel like families can have stronger like predispositions to certain ones, but I feel like everyone is born with at least one. And are you able to unlock it? Yeah, definitely. I think it just depends on like what it is, right? And then just practicing and doing what feels right. So for me, because I was like I am claircognizant, I just felt like tarot cards were just calling my name because that's like just a perfect tool for that type of clair.
Interesting. Yeah, really good questions. I think kind of going back a little bit to what your cousin said, a lot of these people who claim to have psychic abilities, there's old school mentality, but one thing I think of, and it's kind of the crossroads you're getting at right now, is I wonder if they always started like that, right? Because at a certain point, like I'm sure the pressures of like, damn, I have a successful show, I have a successful practice, like it's kind of like everything else, right? Maybe the quality went down and certain aspects took priority. Maybe it was monetary. Maybe it was just the pressures of it. So, not to be an apologist for, the Long Island medium, but I wonder where they started to where they are like now. And I know, and kind of last point with you, like if you are not feeling like you're in a good headspace to do like a reading or a consultation, you won't do it because you don't want to put out a bad product or give bad energy or do that. But as time grows, as commitments grow, like I wonder if it eventually kind of maybe turns into that, and it's just about being careful with understanding that.
Yeah, it's like that cheesy with great power comes great
Exactly.
responsibility.
Yeah.
I hope, but as of now, like if I do ever become bigger, I just feel like at this current moment, like money's nice, but money's not so important that I'll give up my morals for me personally.
Correct.
So I don't think that's gonna happen to me.
I, on the other hand, was very morally questionable. So, like, if you need something done that's morally corrupt, let me know, and I'll probably be your guy. So,
I love how you're like, I'll curse someone, but it's like you couldn't curse the skunk down the road.
awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. A super fun episode. We're here at the end, and you want to give everybody your new socials?
Yeah. So my Instagram is now just Jen Kahlo, at Jen Kahlo, GENKAHLO. And if you don't have Instagram, you can also email me, tarotwithgenesis@gmail.com. Again, I have my live event with Abracadabra. You can pre-book a spot with me or hope you get lucky in person on the 20th from 1 to 6 p.m. And next week's topic is dream interpretations.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening.
Remember, the magic within you makes the world a more beautiful place. Blessed be, and signing off.